Conditions May Apply by CinnamonPinecones. Read by Distracted by Books. Chapter 136. That's a wrap on day 1. Jade's first patrol was as uneventful as promised. Criminals would have to be incredibly stupid to pull something in the blocks surrounding Endeavor's agency in broad daylight. His sidekicks swarmed the streets like ants on a picnic blanket, and he wasn't even the only agency in the city. Even still, there was paperwork to be done. Why the hell was there paperwork that had to be done to report that absolutely nothing of note happened? It was a relatively simple patrol log. They just had to outline who they were, where they went, and when they were out. But it was still annoying. He'd just finished up the log at Vernon's desk when Todoroki and his father walked into the room. Endeavor walked past everyone without so much as a nod of greeting until he made his way to the massive door leading to his office. Vernon was making an ill-advised cup of evening coffee at the table nearby when he called for her. "Vernon, with me. Bring your intern," he ordered before stepping into his office and leaving the door open. Having overheard the whole thing, Izuku was already nearly at Vernon's side when she turned around to call for him, causing her to startle and nearly spill coffee on herself. Thankfully, the hot liquid splashed straight up and back into the cup. Sorry," he quickly apologized. "You're too damn quiet," she barked with no real heat. "Come on, I assume you heard him." She walked away without another word, so he matched her steps after scurrying to catch up. The office was obnoxiously opulent, which he could have guessed based off the doors alone. They looked like they were too big for a person of average strength to open at all. A small forest of trees must have gone into their construction. "I have had a patrol schedule drawn up for the 4 of us. Shoto insisted that patrolling together would offer more experience." Endeavor spoke as soon as the doors shut behind them. He gestured at a paper on his desk, indicating that that was the schedule. Izuku could tell by the tone of his voice that he thought this was a stupid idea, but Todoroki wasn't wrong. Patrolling with a group was very different than patrolling with just a partner. He had only gotten the chance to do that a few times when Hawks wormed his way into the support gear case in Uptown, but it shifted the dynamic drastically. Getting used to patrolling with one person had its benefits, but it also had its downfalls. Remaining flexible would be advantageous in the long run. "Several of these patrols will be outside your normal hours," Endeavor continued. That was almost thoughtful. Izuku genuinely didn't think he was capable of that. It's not like he was asking if she could take the patrols. He was ordering her to, but informing her in advance was kind of nice, if you squint at it. "Noted," she replied as she took the paper, skimming over it briefly before handing it to Izuku. It accounted for morning, afternoon, and evening patrol in the coming days, but no night patrols, which seemed like an oversight. Evening patrols and night patrols were vastly different. Was it a safety concern, or did they not want to go out at night? It certainly wasn't an easy sleep schedule adjustment over the span of a week, but nighttime was when the city needed patrolling the most. Crowds in daylight deterred a lot of crime on their own, but neither of those protected the city once most people were tucked into bed. He was pulled from his thoughts by a swift smack to the back of his head, courtesy of Vernon. She was glaring at him with the look that told him he had said all of that out loud. Todoroki looked contemplative, and Endeavor was looking at him like he was shit stuck to his boot, which wasn't a new development. "He makes a good point." Todoroki spoke up before Endeavor got the chance to. "He probably did that on purpose. He was shifting focus away from Izuku so that he wouldn't get yelled at. He was too kind, but he really wished he hadn't done that. Izuku would much rather get yelled at than have someone get yelled at in his stead." Endeavor's mounting anger sizzled down with a sneer. "I'll have it redrawn," he conceded with malice that he made no attempt to veil. He took the paper from Izuku's hands violently enough that he was surprised he didn't get a paper cut and incinerated it immediately. It was equal parts sad and funny how much that was exactly how a toddler would react when they didn't get their way. He was a grown man throwing a tantrum, and Izuku made damn sure that he bit his tongue as he thought that. Ending up as a scorch mark on Endeavor's carpet was not how he wanted to go out. Can Midoriya stay with us for the week? Todoroki asked after an awkward silence fell over the group. Izuku's stomach dropped to his feet. Did Todoroki not know how much he was pushing his luck? Or did he just not care? He was far too brazen with his father's temper for Izuku's comfort. Endeavor looked over at his son with a face that said there was going to be hell to pay, and Vernon's shocked expression told him that she knew that too. It looked like she was mentally planning what she would say at the funeral. No one else is interning right now. It seems rude to leave him in the agency lodgings alone. He's my friend, so it shouldn't be an issue. It's not like he's a stranger. Todoroki continued. Izuku was doing his best to make a face that communicated just how much he thought Todoroki should shut the heck up. But Todoroki wasn't even looking at him. He tended to focus very intensely on whoever he was speaking to, and if his father's expression of fury wasn't enough to shut him up, Izuku doubted his face would have made any difference anyway. We will discuss this later, Shoto, Endeavor replied through clenched teeth. When? We're going home now, aren't we? Oh my gosh, Todoroki, shut up, please! Oh my gosh, shut up! What are you thinking? Izuku's mental pleading had no effect on the duo, who were staring at each other with enough intensity that he could swear the room's temperature had gone up at least 10 degrees. He glanced back over to Vernon, whose face probably looked very similar to his own expression, a mixture of horror and begging for Todoroki to stop. After a long while of glaring at his son, he turned his focus back over to Izuku, and his eye was actually twitching. Very well. Gather your things, he bit out from behind clenched teeth. Izuku, ever the coward, took the clear dismissal and ran with it. Vernon was not far behind. The door shut behind them again, and the guilt-ridden relief was palpable. Well, it was nice knowing you, Jade. Do me a favor and make sure you're off agency property before he kills you, Vernon said under her breath with a nervous laugh before clapping him on the back again and walking away. This was going to be interesting. Capture weapons were magic, and Eraserhead was a wizard. That was all Hitoshi had gathered from the first incredibly long day of his internship. They had worked in one of the gyms on campus for nearly 10 hours, and he felt like his limbs had turned to mush. This week was going to be hell. How was your first day, Toshi? His mom called excitedly down the hall once she heard the door swing shut. He's trying to kill me, he replied as he kicked off his shoes and walked to the dining room. Somehow I doubt that, she shot back as he sat down heavily at the table. Dinner's going to be soon. Go wash up. Thankfully, her back was turned to the disrespectful face he pulled at her instruction. He just sat down. Regardless, he stood up and trudged his way upstairs. He had already taken a shower at school, so he just washed his hands and changed into his pajamas. His bed had a magnetic pull that was very difficult to resist. But he managed to get himself back downstairs against all odds. Not for the first time. He missed training with Midoriya. He had taken how gentle he was for granted. That thought left a bitter taste in his mouth. For the first day since classes started, He hadn't been forced to look at the curly mess of green hair or the concerning lack thereof all day. He couldn't go a day without his bitter thoughts returning to the same place. He'd yet to properly talk about it all, much to his mom's chagrin, but he still didn't know what to feel yet. He guessed that was why he was supposed to talk about it. A week away from him would probably be a good time to sort everything out. If talking about it only made him angrier, he didn't want to end up taking it out on Midoriya. He seemed to have enough going on anyway. He's not sure why he'd been gone for a few days last week, but he heard whispers that it had been a family issue. He didn't know how much of what Midoriya had told him while they were friends was a lie, but he was certain of one thing at least. His family life was screwed up. He'd told his mom about his day as they ate, but once that conversation lulled, he sucked up his hesitance and pivoted the conversation. Midoriya's interning with Endeavor. He stated plainly. He saw his mother's eyebrows shoot up to her hairline before he looked down at his plate. That's, impressive, she replied cautiously. I'm not surprised, he shrugged. Endeavor's son is in our class. I think he just went with them so they could hang out or something. They sit together at lunch. It's good that you've both got friends, she replied, clearly trying to remain impartial before Hitoshi elaborated on what he was actually trying to talk about. That statement was a stretch, though. He's not sure he could consider Tokoyami and Sue his friends. Sue only sat with them at lunch half the time, and whenever she wasn't there, the two of them hardly ever spoke a word to each other. He supposed they were as close as a group of non-conversationalists could be. He was out for 2 days last week because of a family issue, or at least that's what I heard, he continued. He saw his mom's expression fall at that. She wore her concern openly. He knew she had forgiven Midoriya for what he'd done without even knowing what was going on, and he wished he could do the same. But he couldn't. He was still so angry, and he hated it. Do you know if the school is involved? No. I don't know anything past what someone said that he said to someone else, so I don't even know if it's true. He was worried about him too. He'd looked awful ever since he got back, but anger clouded his concern more than he'd like to admit. Do you think we need to contact the school about it? I don't know. He trailed off, and his mom just waited patiently. I don't know what to do, he finally admitted. About his safety or about what happened before, she asked. He really should be worried about the former. No matter what had happened between them, he should be putting his concern for Midoriya's safety first. It made him sick to his stomach to realize that he hadn't been. What kind of hero was he if he was putting his petty grudge before someone's well-being? Both, I guess, he answered as he mindlessly pushed around the food on his plate. Have you talked to him at all? She asked. I talked to him the first day. He said he was sorry, but he didn't explain anything, so I told him to, leave me alone unless he was going to tell me the truth. He trailed off and chewed at his lip before he brought up the next bit. We were together at the USJ too. He just ordered us around, though. He probably saved our lives. Everyone's lives, actually, he admitted quietly. Do you want to talk about that? Not really. We all got scattered across the building, and Midoriya got Sue and I out of the place we were stuck in, but then he doubled back to help Aizawa-sensei, who was who was in the middle with the leaders, I guess. They were about to kill him when Midoriya, well, he stopped them and stalled until All Might showed up. They both got hurt pretty bad. Sue and I stayed with them until the ambulances took them away. He gave a very brief overview and glossed over all the things he couldn't talk about yet. He didn't know if he was ever going to be able to talk about that, but he was already being vulnerable, so he figured he might as well just spill his guts. His mom had her hand over her mouth in shock, but she pulled herself together quickly. Toshi, I'm so sorry that... She cut herself off. Do you want me to contact the school about Midoriya? You don't have to do anything. I can handle it, she offered. I don't know. Well, he's not going to be home all week, right? We can figure it out. We've got time, she tried to soothe. It didn't really make him feel any better. He didn't think anything was going to make him feel better at this rate. What do you want to happen? What? With Midoriya. What do you want to happen between the two of you? I want everything to go back to how it was, he replied ruefully. That's not going to happen. What's done is done. Do you still want to be his friend? She asked. He was so damn lonely. He'd been so damn lonely since the day Midoriya left. Yes, he wanted to be his friend again. He wanted that more than anything. But every time he saw his face, all he could see was fear, and it made him sick. Midoriya was scared of him, just like everyone else, and it made him want to tear his hair out. He didn't trust his voice right now, so he just nodded his head. All right, then you need to talk to him. Why does it have to be me? He's the one that lied. Toshi, we have no idea why he felt the need to lie, but he did. So why should I have to be the one to fix it? He interrupted and immediately felt bad about it. You shouldn't. It's not fair. But you know better than most that very little in life is fair. His mother returned kindly. She didn't chastise him for raising his voice. She already knew that he regretted it. I'm sorry. He apologized anyway. It's fine, Toshi. You're going through a lot, she dismissed. They sat in heavy silence as the minutes ticked by and the remains of his dinner got cold. I think I should talk to the school. Nothing about this sits right with me, and if we're wrong, the worst that happens is they look into it and find nothing. His mom eventually interrupted the silence. No, it's fine. I'll talk to Aizawa-sensei tomorrow, he insisted. She must have felt the conviction behind his words because she didn't argue with him. She didn't prod him or ask if he was sure. She just nodded and took their plates of mostly finished cold food to the kitchen. Proper manners told him that he should offer to help, but the bone-deep exhaustion was stronger, so he bid his mom good night and threw himself into bed. If there was one thing getting your ass handed to you was good for, it was a solid night's rest, one that he was going to need to get through tomorrow. End of chapter.